Joining us with his own insight is former El Cajon police officer Kevin LaChapelle.
All right, Kevin, given the chaos that comes with a situation like this, I'd imagine it obviously doesn't happen very often, but how do first responders and officers that get to the scene deal with a situation like that? What is their first priority?
Well, their first priority, they're very focused and they're looking for what is the threat so they can neutralize that threat. There's many things going on in their mind as they're approaching those scenes.
Let me ask, as they continue to do the investigation, the police chief saying that they're pretty confident they have a motive for the shooting, that the gunman was upset over a recent breakup. Where does the investigation go from here?
They'll continue interviewing people, from friends, everything, looking at social media. They will do a very, very thorough job. They'll put a good story together as far as what happened, what led up to this horrific incident.
And Kevin, you're talking about putting that story together, putting the puzzle pieces together, if you will. There are a lot of witnesses to this crime. There's the 50 or so people at the party. There's people probably who are around the apartment complex, people even on the street, and like you're talking about, people who know the shooter. How does that puzzle, kind of get put together? Is it something you can put together relatively quickly, or does it just take, weeks and weeks to kind of put all of it together?
It'll take some time because they're going to be very thorough and they're going to be looking into so many things, but they will put it together, and there will be a lot of lessons learned as far as this person, what caused this, all the questions that the public even has.
The police chief, as I mentioned, said race was not a factor, though we have heard from some witnesses, in fact, as most recently in Maria's story there, where some people are saying maybe race was a factor, that this guy targeted African Americans and the other victim was Hispanic. Were you surprised that the police chief was so quick to say that there was zero indication on their end that race was not a factor? And how likely would it be that they continue investigating and then kind of walk back some of their words?
No, I'm not surprised at all, because when you're talking hate crimes, you're looking for very specific intent, statements that were made and so forth. Clearly, there is much more evidence that talks about mental instability than anything else.
All right, Kevin, thank you very much. We appreciate your insight, as always, as we continue to look at different angles of this story.
He's a tactical expert. He's very well versed in these active shooter situations, and he was pretty candid with me today after we looked at some video that showed the officers approaching that gunman yesterday, arriving here on scene. He said that from everything that he saw in those videos, that officers did everything that they should have and made those split-second decisions spot on. What is going through these officers' minds? I mean,
well, the hardest thing is they don't know where he is, other than what the helicopter tells them. But even when a helicopter, even when the air is telling you where he's at, if you haven't been in this complex, you're trying to gauge where he's at. So you see them, they're obviously trying to conceal themselves behind trees, whatever the case is. Obviously, they're trying to get in position as fast as they possibly can. They know this is an active scene. They engage with him. Keep in mind, in their mind, they're also wondering where are these rounds going to go. They're making sure that wherever they're firing, that it doesn't penetrate other apartment homes to injure other people. So all these things are going through their mind that they have to really focus on. Right now, more than likely, they're assessing to see, is the threat neutralized? And once they believe it is, they'll give the signal and they'll all start moving in together. It's very stressful, and this is why the public has to really understand. You have no idea what stress there is involved in something like this. A lot of stress, a lot of training has to come into play, but it is a partnership with the community, because they're relying on people to be telling them, like people on the 911 calls, where's this guy at? What's going on? What does he look like? All those things. My impression when I saw it was, wow, all that training's paying off, because it was really done well.
Now, Mr. LaChapelle also told us that even though someone did die yesterday and there were several other victims that were injured in this shooting, that there is no doubt in his mind that this could have been a lot worse, and he commended those first responders for their quick thinking yesterday.
Well, joining us now on the phone to talk more about how police reacted to the shooting is former El Cajon police officer Kevin LaChapelle. Kevin, thank you for joining me.
Sure.
Well, one of the most stunning revelations we learned today about this attack is the gunman Peter Sellis calling his ex-girlfriend by phone during the shooting rampage. In terms of criminal profiling, what does this tell you about the suspect and his state of mind?
Well, it's very, very troubling for the fact that, he really wanted probably to make her suffer. And for him to do that really gives some insight into the deep issues that he probably had going on inside his mind.
Well, the active shooter training has certainly become a staple in law enforcement, but each situation, of course, presents a set of unique circumstances. What do you think, in your view, made this attack particularly challenging for the officers who came on scene?
You know, I don't know anything particularly challenging. I think all of their training paid off because everything went like clockwork. You know, from the police to the coordination with the hospitals for trauma, everything just was coordinated very well. And I think probably because all the heavy training that they all do with active shooters, especially like with the president of Scripps, Chris Van Gorder, who's also the commander for the Sheriff Search and Rescue, having that deep coordination like that is paying off.
The shooter shot and reloaded from a lounge chair by the pool, another bizarre aspect of this attack. Police saying the motive appears to be depression over a recent breakup. Is this a new brand of assault that officers are having to deal with? We recently saw on Facebook a man who killed someone over an ex-girlfriend. So if this is a new brand of assault or crime that you're seeing, how do you train for that?
Well, I think we are seeing things where people are doing things you know, like that with breakups and things like that. But, I mean, officers basically just have to be able to expect almost anything because we're in times that things present themselves that may not have presented themselves in the past. And so they just have to be situationally aware of every situation that they go into.
And as you saw this play out, what was the biggest takeaway for you, having been someone who's been in situations like this?
The fact that everyone's trying to flee and get away from that shooter while officers are running in to engage him, and it just goes to their bravery and their commitment and professionalism.
Certainly does. And like you said, a coordinated effort that seemed to really pay off.
Absolutely.
All right, Kevin LaChapelle, thank you so much for your insight into the tactical approach and strategies of the officers. We appreciate it.